David has been in the e-commerce business for over 15 years. Most recently, he was the chief marketing officer for Sega. He's going to talk to us a little bit about Bitcoins.
Thanks again for everyone for coming. I know it's towards the end of this conference, and we're the troopers to make sure we get all the information we want. So, how many people in the room here are familiar with Bitcoins? How many have actually, or how many people actually own Bitcoins or have traded Bitcoins in the past? Okay, great. So, I kind of have an idea where to start this, but I think you guys will find this quite interesting, useful information, hopefully. So my background, as the folks have mentioned, was I'm currently an active Bitcoin investor, currently involved with 4 different companies. I've been in the gaming industry for quite some time at Sega Games, Party Poker, in the media business, so on and so forth. I'm a member of the Bitcoin Foundation, whatnot. First off, I'd like to just kind of give everyone kind of a timeline as to how Bitcoin started, when it started, whatnot. Obviously, most of us probably heard this only this year, as a lot of the PR whatnot really kicked in. But really, Bitcoin's been around for quite some time. January 3rd, 2009, 1805 GMT, the original Genesis block was produced. So obviously, you know, this at that point, no one really followed this, but Bitcoin has been in inception since 2009. And June 11th, the Bitcoin client launched, and soon after, the very first transaction occurred. Satoshi Nakamoto and Hal Finney made a transaction. May 21st, a couple interesting things happened. So one of the first major purchases occurred in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and it was for 10,000 Bitcoins, and that product was actually for pizza. So as of today's price, when you look at that transaction, this is over $1 million US for pizza that, you know, from 2009. So I hope it tasted quite good. And then March 2013, a couple really interesting things occurred and that really propelled this thing. And this is what I would call the Cypress effect. You can kind of see that from the chart here, it really didn't we didn't really see a spike until March 2013. And the reason for this was Cyprus, a little small country territory out in the Mediterranean, had a financial crisis. A lot of folks from either Cyprus, internationally, the rest of the EU, put quite a bit of capital within these banks and whatnot. And the view from the banking systems was that possibly to cover financial losses and whatnot, people who have money in their bank accounts might not get any of it back. So you can kind of imagine quite a frenzy occurred, and people try to start withdrawing money from their banks. Often these people would line up 24 hours a day for 3-4 days without any real hope of getting money back out. People really started noticing Bitcoin at this time as Cyprus people started really seeing that Bitcoin was actually a currency that was actually, oddly enough, more trusted than their government's currency, as there's a little bit more limited supply and they can kind of trade freely without government intervention and whatnot. So you can kind of see in March it really skyrocketed. It got up to about $266. And today we're settling probably around 105 or so. With this chart, I'll just go over a couple key things that's occurred in the Bitcoin system in terms of what caused all this fluctuation. So once it got to around 266, which is the peak here, one of the exchanges, Mt. Gox, had some challenges and caused some subsequent decline. I think now it's kind of flattened out a little bit, but this is a very interesting business. I think it can impact a lot of your businesses, but it's definitely not for the faint of heart, as it is definitely quite volatile. So why are Bitcoins beneficial, and what does it mean for you guys? So first off, is it's instantaneous transactions. So what I mean by that is that if I decide to wire a Bitcoin to whoever may be here, literally within a matter of seconds, 2-3 seconds, you'll receive the Bitcoin in your Bitcoin wallet or however else you would look to hold the Bitcoin. You can imagine even when you wire a friend PayPal, money via PayPal, Western Union, bank wires, whatnot, those often take a couple days and so on. So instantaneous transactions for e-com, for internet, for games, it's quite important. Processing fee is extremely low, so we're talking about 0.3%. Often, as you know, with PayPal, whatnot, you're upwards of 3 or even higher for other processing companies at certain points in time. So we're talking about 0.3. So this is when you actually either use money to change the Bitcoins or convert Bitcoins back to cash. So a lot of the transactions today is actually peer-to-peer. So it's basically myself giving a Bitcoin to someone else, and that's actually no transaction. So there's no fees whatsoever. Bitcoins are traded in a very, very small amount. So as I mentioned before, although Bitcoin is worth around $104 today, it doesn't mean that you have to have $104 to be involved with Bitcoin. You can buy Bitcoins or sell Bitcoins in very, very small numbers. So it's essentially an eighth of essentially an eighth of one. So you can have extremely micro transactions. I, again, come from the gaming background. I actually feel that's a huge, huge advantage for the gaming business, as I always felt that didn't really make a lot of sense for the current denominations of currency to games. Fourth of all, the anonymity of this is interesting for some people. It could be quite powerful, but unfortunately, some people do use this for bad things. So I won't cover that too much for this discussion. Fifth of all, chargeback. So for those who offer different online businesses, e-com, games, whatnot, I'm sure you guys all face a lot of chargeback issues. So with Bitcoins, once a transaction occurs, you receive a Bitcoin, that's sort of it. So it's sort of a buyer beware type system, which is in a way good or bad, but from a merchant standpoint, at least once you get the Bitcoin, you know what you got, and you can kind of build your business around that. And last of all, which is probably one of the most important things, is that it's quite limited in quantity. So this is one of those things that, unlike a lot of currencies around the world or whatnot, you can't just keep on printing it. So a lot of folks believe that it actually holds value potentially because of that fact. In terms of that last point I mentioned with limited quantity, so I'll kind of touch on this here in terms of the circulation. So right now, as of today, there's a little over 11 million Bitcoins in circulation now. This is again from 2009, so you can kind of see over time, quite a few Bitcoins have come out. And the peak Bitcoins ever in circulation will be 22. So we're actually already past halfway in terms of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and we're only a few years in on this. So you can kind of imagine at some point in time, once Bitcoins are, all of them are released, you can kind of imagine the supply demand of these might potentially increase. How Bitcoins currently get released is that essentially every 10 minutes, 25 Bitcoins get released. So mainly what happens is miners, I actually prefer to call them system auditors, if you will. They go and essentially tap into Bitcoin. They kind of use their processing to kind of mine Bitcoins, and every 10 minutes, 25 get released. So it's quite competitive to get this right now. This continues to get reduced by half starting 2017, and eventually, based on the current trend or the current dates and whatnot, by 2140, no Bitcoins will ever be released. So that'll be the cap. So you can kind of see where we are today in terms of where the first Bitcoin kind of started and how much has been released. So it's a little over 11 million again. One aspect of this, I'm sure, comes across everyone's mind when they hear Bitcoin and whatnot, is the regulatory, I guess, legal aspect of it. And this is quite, as you can probably imagine, challenging. Things change quite often. Every other day there's different things that occur with any new unregulated industry, if you will. But from a user's perspective, there were some positive things by the FinCEN, which is the financial enforcement group, essentially by the US government, which issued a statement basically saying that a person using Bitcoin, which they deem a virtual currency, is fine. The challenge would be any company, whatnot, that transfers or that changes Bitcoins to US dollars, they need different licenses and whatnot. So this is something that will probably continue to change either in the US level, international, whatnot. And you can kind of imagine there'll be obviously a lot of tax consequences and so on and so forth with virtual currency and Bitcoin. So Bitcoin to trade volume here, you can kind of see right now we're seeing around 4 million Bitcoins traded a day right now. So all in all, it's not a whole lot. So 4 million, you think about it, it's probably about $40 million in Bitcoins or whatnot being traded a day. Not a whole lot. What this chart doesn't necessarily show is how many Bitcoins are being sent a day. So as I mentioned earlier on, a lot of Bitcoins would be transferred, whereas I might give it to a friend, or a friend might send it to me. So it doesn't necessarily go through a payment processing transaction. It's just P2P again. So right now we're seeing around 1 million Bitcoins being transacted a day. So from a utility standpoint, clearly a lot of people are using this. Clearly a lot of people are sending this back and forth. So that's a pretty good, interesting, I guess, data point to see the growth of this. So what's next for Bitcoin? A couple interesting things are kind of developing right now from an international front. So obviously Bitcoin really came about here in the US, but it's really caught on internationally now. So in May, as of this year, China on that monthly basis actually had more Bitcoin installers than the US. So that was the first time ever. So we're really seeing this on expand internationally at a very rapid pace. Other places like Kenya has recently adopted, they kind of integrate Bitcoin with a system called M-Pesa, which is their local, I guess, currency system, if you will. So we're really seeing this really expand not only in US, North America, but abroad as well. We're seeing a lot more merchants now take this, and some of these are a little bit more of the bigger established players. OkCupid, which is a subsidiary of Match.com, a dating site, obviously, they started taking this maybe about a month ago. There's some early stage technology companies here, Foodler, that delivers food, that started taking Bitcoins. WordPress, many months ago, has started taking Bitcoins. So I think this is kind of the trend that we'll see. More and more companies start taking Bitcoins, and this will obviously make the currency a little more valuable and more useful, I guess. Regulatory progress and setbacks. So as of 2 days ago, we had some issues with Bitcoins in Thailand. So the central bank and whatnot, they're still kind of trying to understand Bitcoins, but as of today, they feel that they prohibit people or companies trading Bitcoin. So hopefully we'll see some more positive news on that front, but it's kind of a mixed bag right now internationally. Some places are quite pro Bitcoin, others are still kind of learning about it. But you can kind of see since 2009 till now, only 4 years or whatnot, this has really gone international, and it's something that I think a lot of companies should at least be aware of. They should, especially games companies, in my opinion, to be aware of, to really see how to navigate through this, as there should be a lot of potential benefit. And then lastly, which is kind of validates the whole system and kind of touches on all the other points, is that we're seeing a lot of institutional investing in this right now. So within the last 3 months, there's been over 6 venture capital firms that's announced investments in Bitcoins, and many of these are quite large names that everyone here will be familiar with, which again kind of signals that people really see this as a potentially interesting business, and that many of the regulatory, hopefully, challenges will be minimized or reduced. So I really wanted to kind of leave time so we can kind of ask questions, as this kind of this could be a very, very complicated business, or it could be very simple. So I want to kind of leave room to kind of have you guys ask questions and kind of see how this can help your business potentially. Sure, David?
Yeah, I think you should discuss what you've mentioned, that the Bitcoin technology itself is a real big implication for game developers, because you can integrate the transactions themselves into a method of determining the outcome of a game. You're going to have gambling. Satoshi Dice, for example, is driven by data that's generated by the actual transactions themselves.
Correct.
A couple other developers have done the same thing.
Absolutely. So what's interesting about Bitcoin for this particular conference would be that one of the, I guess, most successful Bitcoin companies currently is a games company. So over 50% of all the blockchain transactions is via this company. So you can kind of see that this is, people aren't necessarily using Bitcoins to go buy hats or shoes or computer supplies. They actually use this for gaming. So by far right now, the most popular or the biggest usage of this is via gaming. What David touched on earlier was the aspect of how the Bitcoin system works, and via the blockchain, there's essentially random odd generators and whatnot. And what's nice about this is that first, things like that's already developed, so you don't necessarily need to go and, I guess, utilize your own. But secondly, this is completely open. So on one aspect, this is anonymous currency, cryptocurrency, so on and so forth. But from a system standpoint, it's extremely wide open, and it's P2P, obviously. So what that means is that any transaction in terms of a game, if I want to go and audit to see if it was fair, if I want to see, hey, who actually won, if anything was actually paid out, I can actually sit there and quite easily verify that myself. So I think because of that, the fairness and things of that nature, especially with gaming, falls very well within the Bitcoin realm. Any other questions? Sure, go ahead.
Just from the casino game side, I think the anonymity is a big issue in the regulated markets. I think that's probably prevent our customers.
Correct. That's a good point. The KYC laws for gaming is something that's quite strict. Right now, there are some of the bigger online gambling companies, or I wouldn't say bigger, but there are some online gambling companies in the UK starting to use this now. Some of the Playtech licensees have started. The way they've done it is you make transactions via Bitcoin, but they still capture user data. So you still fill in your name, address, and so on and so forth, send in your proof of residence, so on and so forth. So it doesn't necessarily fully utilize the Bitcoin mechanism, but there are ways to circumvent and make it, I guess, KYC passable. Any other questions? Okay, so I guess for me, in closing, I just think that from my perspective of like being in the games business, being in online gambling, so on and so forth, I just feel that currency has always been a major setback. You always have to, it was always difficult, challenging to find good payment processing partners. There hasn't, to me, been a ton of innovation with payment processing, as we all, spend a lot of time to improve games, virality of games, different, things to improve the product. I haven't really seen a whole lot from a payment side of things, so that sort of just kind of became stagnant. So for me, at least, via my years of gaming and whatnot, I think this is kind of a major disruption in the payment processing standpoint now. So I think now, the younger generation, the 21-year-old kids now, they're very familiar with Bitcoin. They like using it. So at some point in time, it's something definitely every company should start evaluating. Obviously, the regulatory changes could, things could change overnight anytime, but it's something I think everyone should be at least aware of and keep an eye on and kind of see how this thing really pans out. Okay, thank you.